Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. U.S. President Donald Trump has escalated his tariff strategy even after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down his reciprocal tariffs in a 6-3 ruling. Instead of retreating, the administration has rolled out new global tariffs and is reviewing additional sector-specific measures under the national security laws. At the same time, tensions involving Iran are adding fresh uncertainty to global oil markets. Here in Korea, the Bank of Korea has just held rates at 2.5% for a sixth straight meeting, while raising its growth forecast to 2.0%, signaling stronger momentum than previously expected. So we are looking at a moment where global trade pressure, geopolitical risk, and shifting domestic policy signals are colliding. So tonight we examine what this means for Korea's economy and what policymakers should do next. For this, we are joined in the studio by Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. A very big welcome.
Happy to be here.
And also joining us online is Kim Mok-yeon, Associate Professor of Economics at Yonsei University. Good to see you, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with Professor Yang. The legal shock in Washington, of course. The Supreme Court ruled that President Trump's reciprocal tariffs were unlawful. How significant is this ruling in terms of, limiting the president's trade authority?
Okay, well, it limits President Trump's authority somewhat. It reduces flexibility for him, but fundamentally, he does have other tools that he can use to impose tariffs. Now, the reason that he lost the IEEPA case was that the IEEPA does not explicitly give President Trump the right to impose tariffs and impose the rates, whichever rates he wants. The key word here was regulate, and the Supreme Court determined that it does give him the right to, say, change quotas, how much he can allow to import in terms of volume or numbers, but it does not give him the right to impose tariffs, which are taxes on American businesses and consumers. And he does the ability to tax is limited to Congress unless it explicitly gives that right to the president. He does have other tools which does give President Trump the right to determine tariffs or impose tariffs, and he has used the Section 122 tariffs to replace the IEEPA. But the problem with 122 is that you have to charge same tariffs to everybody. You cannot discriminate between countries. And while he does have the ability to exempt certain industries and even FTAs from tariffs, he cannot, say, impose one tariff on Japan, the other tariff rate on other countries. So he's right now imposing 10% tariffs on every country. He's threatening to raise that to 15%, which is the maximum that he could impose under Section 122. If he wants to go back to a regime that was similar to reciprocal tariffs, then he will have to use other tools. The tools that he says that he's going to use is Section 301 and Section 232. 232 is already in effect for certain industries: steel, aluminum, automobiles, leather furniture, and lumber. But these are tariffs which are supposed to be imposed for national defense. It's questionable how important lumber and leather furniture is for national defense, but it does require a report to be filled out before the tariffs are imposed to see whether they really impose problems in national defense. So he will have to make a report before he imposes other Section 232 tariffs. Similarly, for Section 301, Section 301 is meant to open other countries' markets where other countries supposedly discriminate against American imports. You also need a report by USTR before you can impose the Section 301 tariffs. So both of those tools are going to take time. They're going to have to write up reports, and the reports for Section 301 typically took somewhere between 6 months to 18 months, but the Trump administration supposedly is going to accelerate the writing process. But Section 301 imposes no limits on tariff once that report is written, but it can limit President Trump's ability to just change whichever industries he wants to impose tariffs on, or change the rates whenever he wants. That ability is going to be, he still does have the right to make the tariffs somewhat flexible, but not as easily as what it was in IEEPA. He does have other tools like Section 338, which also requires some time limits, and it's questionable whether that law is still valid because that was written in 1930. He does have Section 201 as well, but the U.S. presidents have been reluctant to use Section 201 for various reasons, technical reasons. So it does limit his flexibility, but it does not change his fundamental ability to charge tariffs, but it is going to take more time.
Thank you so much for giving us a clear summary of the current situation. So as our Professor Yang has mentioned, President Trump, he invoked Section 122 to impose a 10%, soon maybe 15% global tariff, and also signaled possible use of Sections 232 and 301. Professor Shim, are we now seeing a shift towards a legally stronger and potentially even tougher tariff mechanisms?
Yeah, in the sense that the U.S. president and his cabinet will base actions based on the law, which is that which he has the agreement on from the public. We might see a shift toward legally strong actions. Most importantly, it is clear that the current U.S. government does not want to lose its influence on the global economy by utilizing the tariff as its policy tools. So the U.S. president would put tougher restrictions on trade, but as Professor Yang has already pointed out, I'm not so sure if it can be a real threat, more effective than before. First, the global tariff rate can be applied for at most 5 months if the Congress does not agree with the president. Second, the U.S. cannot punish a particular country with higher tariff rate anymore because the government cannot impose higher tariff on any products as it did last year. So in short, because President Trump would utilize any tools to generate larger trade surplus through imposing higher tariff rate, the tariff mechanism that we have seen from the last year will continue at least for a while.
Right, so the tools may change, but the direction, it seems to stay the same. Professor Yang, you've mentioned a while ago about the new Section 232 tariffs under review for sectors like batteries, industrial chemicals, and also telecom equipment. Looking at South Korea's export profile, where are we most exposed?
Okay, it's probably going to be industrial chemicals if they include petroleum products and petrochemicals. They are, in some sense, most vulnerable to foreign protection. And that's because, well, the petrochemicals and petroleum products are about 5th and 6th largest export items for Korea. And these industries right now are under intense pressure by China, whose lower costs are pushing out Korean exports. So those are probably the most vulnerable industry we have at the moment. Other vulnerable industries can include telecom equipment and perhaps semiconductors. President Trump is always threatening 232 tariffs on semiconductors, but the problem is, right now, U.S. growth depends substantially on imports of semiconductors and IT equipment. Right now, there's no tariff on them at all. Now, if President Trump does impose tariffs in these areas, it will be much more harmful to Korea than industrial chemicals. But then President Trump will be hurting his own U.S. growth rate probably at the same time. Right now, the demand for semiconductors is so high that the prices are just skyrocketing. And if President Trump imposes further tariffs, then that's going to raise those prices even further, and that's going to hurt construction of data centers in the U.S. and cut down his own tariff rate, growth rate. But the problem with President Trump is that you cannot rule these type of self-harming policies completely out, because sometimes President Trump does tend to be somewhat irrational.
So we really don't know how things will unfold, but it seems to be a very tough situation in that. Now, South Korea, we agreed to major investment commitments in exchange for lowering reciprocal tariffs from 25% to 15%, but those very tariffs were just ruled unlawful by the Supreme Court. Professor Shim, how does that weaken the basis of the agreement? Do you think Seoul should seek for adjustments?
I believe that the Korean government should maintain its low-key strategy, because there is a clear possibility that the baseline strategy of the U.S. does not change. If the Korean government explicitly argues that the investment bill would not be executed as planned because of the ruling, it will provoke the U.S. government and the president, and the U.S. government may put additional pressure on the key export items, such as memory chips and cars, by applying the item-specific tariff rate, which it already does. And President Trump has already warned other countries in this regard. And also, we have seen such a situation in Japan before the ruling. There was news that President Trump was upset about the slow pace of the investment plan from Japan, and it could possibly raise the tariff rate in Japan. So the Korean government seems to take the stance, so-called wait-and-see strategy, which seems to be plausible at this point, because the Korean government, for the Korean government, is recommended to wait until all the uncertainty surrounding the tariff rate and the possible renegotiation is resolved.
So, keeping with our initial commitments would be more helpful right now. Well, there's also this issue of refunds, Professor Young. The court didn't clearly address the tariffs have already been paid. So from a business standpoint, how should Korean companies assess their chances of getting their money back, and what should they be doing right now?
Okay, well, unless the Korean companies actually pay tariffs to the United States government, they're not going to get anything. Only the people who have actually legally paid the money are eligible to get that tariff back. And usually the actual company or the people who have paid the tariffs are American importers. So if, say, U.S. division of a Korean company paid the tariff, then they might be able to get the tariffs back. But if, say, you're a Korean company and you lowered your prices because the U.S. importer was saying, we have to pay tariffs, so we cannot pay you as much as before. So if Korean company lowered the prices for the American importer, Korean company is not going to get anything back. It will be the American importer who will get the tariffs back. Same thing happens with the U.S. consumers. If the U.S. importer passed the cost to the consumers so that consumers pay a higher price, consumers don't get anything back. It'll be the actual legal payer of the tariff which will get the tariff back, and it's questionable whether they'll give anything back to Korean companies or American consumers. So basically, unless you actually have the receipt, you're out of luck.
So there's still uncertainty regarding the refund measures. Now, shifting gears a little bit, beyond trade, there's also a geopolitical layer. President Trump signaled that military options still remain available regarding Iran. So if tensions escalate and oil prices rise, how would that shock transmit through Korea's economy, from inflation to the exchange rate and eventually to interest rates?
There are several reasons why higher geographical risk that comes from the US might drag down the Korean economy. First, global supply network would be negatively affected again, as we have experienced from Ukraine-Russian war and COVID-19 crisis. Uh, Disruption in the supply network raised the production costs and potentially drag down the global economy again. And higher production costs would result in higher price level in most of the countries. And this would add to the negative effects of the tariff war on the overall price level, which would push the central banks not to lower the interest rate very soon. This is because the monetary policy takes time to be effective on the real economy. And this raises another problem because the low interest rate is usually recommended to stimulate the economy. This tension makes the central bank, including the Bank of Korea, to wait until the geographical risk is resolved. And second, while the geographical tension is now mostly from the Middle East Asia, it can be spilled over to North Korea at some point. So this tension potentially lowers the value of Korean won further, which can be problematic because the devaluation of Korean won has already been a really big problem in Korea from the last year.
So having heard that, let's turn over to the situation here at home, Professor Young. The Bank of Korea has just decided to hold the benchmark rate at 2.5%, and also the growth rate now is revised up to 2%. Do you think this confirms that the easing cycle has come to an end?
I think so, and the Bank of Korea hinted in January that the lowering of the exchange rate probably was over. Now, and the reason for that is we have, even in January, we had a growth rate estimate of 1.8%, and that was the Korea's potential growth rate. When the growth rate is at or higher than potential growth rate, there's really no theoretical reason why you should lower rates unless certain areas require lower rates. Now, some people have been arguing that you need lower rates because consumption level is low, but right now consumers seem to be optimistic, and the higher stock market may increase consumption, so there's really no reason to lower the rates right now.
So with all of these facts taken together, a more assertive U.S. tariff strategy, Middle East uncertainty, and possible upward revisions to domestic forecasts, what should be South Korea's top priority now in coordinating trade and monetary policy going forward, Professor Shim?
Let me first point out the current state of the Korean economy is not that bad if we compare the current state to what we experienced at the beginning of last year. At the last year, the growth rate from a year ago was almost zero, and it has steadily increased from 0% to about 2% as announced today. And I believe this is not the bad signal. But the question is if the growth rate can become higher than this because it is still not sufficiently high if we think about the potential growth rate of South Korea. So in this sense, together with the rapid changes in the labor market and production procedure due to the rapid development of AI technology, the Korean economy should put more efforts to structure the economy to achieve 3% of the potential growth rate by accelerating technological transformation. And also the uncertainty surrounding the global market is still there, as we discussed earlier. So we need to think about the way to overcome this situation. And one possible way is to have a close and concrete economic relationship or economic partnership with other countries, including Japan, European countries, or China, that would have the funds to make more aggregate more investment and production plans, thanks to lower uncertainty about the future, which can help stabilize the Korean economy as well as spur the economic growth further.
So it's indeed a complex and uncertain global moment, and we'll have to see how the direction of South Korea's policies would move the situation forward. We'll have to conclude our discussion here tonight. Thank you so much for your insights, Professor Shim.
Thank you.
And of course, our Professor Yang, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.